Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome to Skald against the Black Priory from High North Studios and Raw Fury. Real nostalgia bait for folks who grew up in the 90s or maybe even the early 2000s. For me, this is very reminiscent of the classic SSI Gold Box games that I essentially grew up on. I'm actually a bit late to the boat on this one, but you know, what else is new? It hit full launch a few months ago, and while I have been enjoying it in my spare time, I've been a bit hesitant to do anything with it because of the dedication to the retro style. I'm not sure how well this plays on YouTube. But, you know, I had some free time, so I figured, what the heck, let's give it a shot. We'll do a quick dip, play through the prologue, kick the tires, so to speak, and most importantly, get some more eyeballs on it. And if it happens to pique your interest in particular, then I encourage you to go check it out on Steam. And who knows, if enough people like watching me play it, then perhaps it will become more than simply a glorified one-shot pilot prologue. That said, let's not get ahead of ourselves. As always, there are many, many games that are vying for my very limited time. So let's see how you actually like this one first. Skald against the Black Priory. We'll cobble together a quick character, and then delve into this nostalgic nightmare. I'll also note, I am, of course, somewhat familiar with the game. I haven't beaten it, but I have sunk like 10-15 hours into it. So I'm going to try to keep things moving here, but feel free to ask any questions you have down in the comments below, and I'll try to answer. First up, we've got to get some class. We have 9 options to choose from, most of which fall into fairly stereotypical fantasy archetypes. Though I will say, and this is one of my various minor points of contention with the game, you do get a bit pigeonholed here if you plan on traveling with the story-driven companions. There's only 5, so that covers over half of the classes, unless you don't mind being redundant and doubling up on a single class. I mean, you do have the option to make custom mercenaries, so you can really build your party however you want, but that does come at the sacrifice of story, if you choose to go that route. For me, of course, I much prefer to fully steep myself in the nightmarish narrative on offer. And so I shall go with Officer, one of the few classes I know is not from the stable of persistent story characters we're apt to encounter throughout the rest of our travels. Not, I suppose, that it's really apt to matter if we don't end up making this a regular series. But still, might as well plan ahead. And to that end, we now have our background to choose. And while we do have many an option here, each of which comes with its own individual, minor but notable bonus, ultimately, given that our main character is apt to be the one in lead of the party on most occasions, we'll lean into awareness and diplomacy, both of which are very important skills for our point man to have. And whilst those bonuses may seem modest, it is actually a fairly significant boost because we have 5 stat points and we have 6 skill points, and we will get precious few throughout the rest of the game. Your class will offer you basically a single point of your primary stat, in our case strength, and about 3 to 5 skill points depending. Though again, it's essentially preset based on your class, in our case athletics and diplomacy. You're essentially establishing the permanent framework for your character's build here, with precious few opportunities to really stray from it for the rest of the 25-30 hour campaign. So with that in mind, we'll set our initial stat spread thusly. Modest fortitude with slightly better presence and strength. And I will say, presence is a bit of a questionable stat for a martial class. Aside from willpower, it really doesn't do much for your actual combat abilities. But in our particular case, it also bolsters awareness and diplomacy, which are very important for our particular build, with the hopes that shield and heavy armor will help offset our inability to actually avoid enemy attacks, which also in turn should be somewhat helped by completely cranking our diplomacy skill like this. Because aside from resolving non-combat encounters, diplomacy also sets base prices when you're trading, and one of the main ways that you have of influencing your stats and skills outside of your simple class progression is by finding or purchasing magical items. And having a good party spokesman, a master negotiator, and haggler is the prime means of getting the items that you really need to kit out your builds. But again, that is, of course, long-term planning, not really something that's apt to come up much in the short-term prologue. Still, pays to plan ahead. After that, we've got feats, and this, of course, is your primary means of character growth over time. In our particular case, we have the Arms Master tree, which covers our martial prowess. Somewhat limited since we're not a full warrior, but we can train in swords, shields, or axes. And in our case, we'll be going for axes and shields. Then you've got the Bred for War tree, which is essentially your toughness and survival sort of tree. We'll be leaning on that pretty heavily to offset our relatively low fortitude. Our ultimate goal there would be to go all in on heavy armor, although obviously well beyond our means this early in the game. And then aside from that, we've got the leadership tree, which is the one tree unique to the officer. And that, of course, is where we find all of our special, unique officer abilities. At lower levels, it's mostly just a bump to our diplomacy and various strategic substats. But eventually, it grants access to various abilities to bolster and rally your erstwhile ally. Again, well beyond anything that we can actually do right now, but we can at least establish some basic groundwork. Some accuracy boosts in melee. Some basic shield training to help partially offset our lackluster agility. 3 points into Bred for War, so we're halfway up to Second Wind, which is a particularly vital ability for pretty much any martial class. Essentially a repeatable self-heal in combat that we will need to make heavy use of to really stay viable. We're not quite there just yet, but we do still pick up a couple of other minor perks en route. And then our one remaining point goes into diplomacy, which just leaves cosmetics. And yeah, true to form, this one is of course somewhat inherently limited. But given that we are an axe and shield wielding warrior, I do have a particular portrait in mind. There we go. Let me just set our colors real quick. This is a particularly grim-dark setting, so let's dress the part. And there we go. Looks good to me. Oh yes, and then our name. I actually have one prepared here. Farron Ulf, the Iron Wolf. Sort of a double whammy there. Both a nod to my love of wordplay and my love of obscure character properties. Oh, shoot. Right, I guess I exceeded the character limit. Fair enough. I guess we'll just roll with Farron then. But we know in our heart of hearts who you truly are. It begins. On the wide, dark, raging seas of the Outer Isles, a lone caravel struggles against the winds and waves towards the accursed island of Idra. The moan of creaking timbers, the tang of preserved fish. Your eyes slowly adjust to the darkness of the ship's dimly lit hold. Suddenly, something strikes the hull, and the ship rocks violently. Your heart begins to pound, and a feeling of unease grows in your stomach. You rise, well rested and ready to go. You get to your feet and become aware of agitated voices shouting up on deck. Something is not right. You should make your way up top and get a bearing on the situation. Be on your way. Alright, let's get our bearings here. Can't be far now. A desk with a maritime navigation map. The map is labeled The Outer Isles, and a course is drawn towards an island named Idra. Oh yes, and I do have the tutorials enabled, but I won't be lingering on them very long. But feel free to pause if you'd like to see the nitty-gritty of how all this comes together. I, however, will be focused on venturing forth. We'll go with the club. Farron's not really known for his finesse. Locked. To your surprise, you realize that this door has been locked from the outside. It doesn't budge. Perhaps you could slip the lock with a thin blade, or use something to smash it? Using the club, you smash the lock in a fell swoop. The door begins to creak open. As the door swings open, you can now clearly make out cries from the deck above. You should make haste. Aha! The brutish tools of our trade. Yeah, let's go ahead and get this stuff equipped. Though I will note, encumbrance is notable in that it is somewhat contextual based on the type of gear. In this case, wearing this helmet will actually reduce our awareness by 1, whereas the body armor will instead reduce our dodge and athletics. And then similarly, gloves and boots will reduce various other skills, thievery, sneaking, though encumbrance can be partially offset by armor mastery or by masterwork gear. And then as far as weapons go, no axe, but we'll make do with the sword. And what the heck, yeah, we'll equip the bow, why not? We suck with it, but might as well. I spotted something. Ah. You stop dead as you narrowly avoid stepping in a rust-red puddle. The stench of blood fills your nostrils, and as you look around in the dim light of the hold, you realize someone or something fought for their life here. The same moment the thought hits you, a hiss sounds from the shadows. You squint towards the shadows as a hunched, feral-looking form slowly slinks forward. Tiny, disgustingly human-like hands, yellow fangs, and a grotesquely dexterous pink tail leave no doubt of the creature's rodent nature. Though, as it emerges from the shadows, it becomes abundantly clear that what may have started life as a common shiprat has now grown into something that has no right to exist. A second hiss sounds behind you, and the abominations lunge at you. And here's our first fight, which honestly is somewhat vaguely reminiscent of, again, the classic old gold box games. Fairly straightforward, very brutal. It does take a little getting used to. But once you figure it out, it's pretty easy to navigate. Again, one of my very minor quibbles here is that there is a combat log, which does make it easier to keep track of what's happening. But if you open it, it covers the entire screen, so that's a feature that could certainly stand some improvement. That said, we should be able to make short work of these beasts. One out, the other one panicking. We have taken some minor scrapes, but that is only to our vitality, which is essentially ablative, flesh wound style surface health. And victory! The beasts are no more, and we claim these tails as trophies of our triumph. Sadly, it does appear that we picked up a mild infection during that fight. Yes, we're weakly diseased. Well, that just completely wipes out our agility, so we are even less graceful than normal now. At least until we find some way to cure our current condition. And potatoes aren't going to do it. Thankfully, I believe this is part of our set tutorial, so we should have something here somewhere. Yes, okay. Yeah. This is the condition tutorial. And the awareness tutorial. Very nice. So from the tutorial, we know that this barrel here has what we need. But we're currently suffering from darkness penalties, so we need to equip this lantern. And there we go. Oh, and a bonus. Let's do a quick canvas here just in case. Okay, so just the two. Which nets us heaping handfuls of salt. And look at that, a convenient potion of cure disease, which we will immediately consume. Alright, let's step things up. You emerge onto the ship's lower deck. As your eyes adjust to the darkness, you become aware of a hulking figure standing in the shadows. Berryn, here at last, growls a rough voice. Who's there? Show yourself. It's Roland. Where the tides have you been? Below decks, planning our landing. Why? The island is in sight, but the damn guilders refuse to land. They want to turn back. But if we turn back, we lose our shot at the girl. And no one gets paid. Listen here, I know our boys better than most. We've hired them to go to Idra and kill. If we don't pay them, things will go bad quickly. But the sailors are bloody terrified. They claim something is hunting us. I see. Well, let's get up there for all the good it'll do. Wait, there's a few sailors up ahead, rattled as a pair of rabbits. You think they'll give us trouble? Any way around them? There are 2 doors ahead. Take the left and we should be able to sneak past them without any trouble. Understood. Anything else I should know? Let's just get off this bloody boat. Motioning for you to take the lead, Roland falls in behind you. From above, agitated shouts can be heard. Hey! And there's our first party member. And this, of course, also delves a bit into what I was commenting on earlier. If you intend to use the story-driven characters, it does behoove you to plan around them. Roland here, for example, is an arms master, slightly more focused on offense than defense like we are. I'll also note, both the story characters and the customizable mercenaries can be built from the ground up, but the story characters come with their framework already in place. Roland here already has his class and his base stats and skills set, so as you can see here, his focus is on strength, athletics, and then some modest survival. But then beyond that basic framework, we do have complete control over his feats. He has access to both the full Arms Master tree, plus the Bred for War tree, which is identical to the one that we had. There's obviously a fair bit of overlap there, but given that we've already established Berryn is going to be our heavily armored point man, we'll build Roland to complement that, which actually works just fine because he starts with a 2-handed sword and a slightly higher agility. So I think we'll lean into that. We'll stack a few points into 2-handed, We'll go all in on Bread for War. Immediately unlock Second Wind to add to his survivability. And you know what? He's not much good if he can't actually hit. So we'll sink a single point into Sword Initiate, just to get that extra bit of accuracy. Welcome aboard, Roland. Here's to a long and fruitful partnership. Ah, yes, and here we have our first crafting station, or specifically a cooking station. The game uses a rest system limited inherently by food items. You, much like in Baldur's Gate 3 actually, you only gain the full benefits of resting if you have sufficient food to go around. Though we don't currently have any actual recipes, so... A note is scrawled in crude letters. Cook, I cannot stand another meal of salted fish. There's a limit to how long a man can live on salt, potatoes, and perklin. Take heed, or get a dagger in the eye, you cheap bastard. The words of a man with a fish and chip on his shoulder. Though more notably, that very tenuously gives us our first recipe. Though we are currently lacking in the actual fish part of fish and chips. Also, none of our characters are actually trained in crafting. Though you can still cook basic food items. You just get more quantity if you're actually good at it. Oh, thieves' tools. We'll take those. We've also got this thing. I've seen a few in the world, but I have yet to actually be able to interact with one. That does make me wonder if it's a crafting station they didn't end up fully implementing. Some sort of weapon upgrade station, perhaps? In the current build, there's just cooking stations and brewing stations for potions. Oh, hey. Actually succeeded in our check. Guess we're ever so slightly craftier than I thought. Speaking of which, now it's time for our stealth tutorial. And I will say, this is actually one of the systems I really do kind of like. A lot of games struggle with basic stealth mechanics. But while Skald is lacking in a lot of other areas due to its devotion to the retro aesthetic, it shockingly is one of the few that really feels like it got a nice solid stealth system. When you first enter stealth, you start at 100%. You are successfully hidden. But then every space you move, that amount is reduced based on various factors. Your own skill, worn items, environmental factors, lighting conditions, enemy facing and proximity. And once it dips below 0%, you're successfully spotted and thus suffer the consequences. But you also have the opportunity to essentially replenish your stealth if you find yourself in an appropriate position, particularly deep shadows or behind an appropriate obstacle. In our particular case, both of our characters are terrible at stealth. We have bare minimum agility and no actual training, so... Oop. The sailors stare at you, wide-eyed and terrified. Dead Emperors! It's coming for us! It whispers to me! One of them draws a weapon with shaking hands. Calm down, the both of you. You're guild sailors. Act like it. And here's our first open skill check. And again, fairly simple, intuitive system. For those who are familiar with GURPS, it's somewhat like a GURPS Lite system. You have your basic difficulty number, then you roll 2 6-sided dice and add the appropriate modifiers. In this particular case, we basically have no chance of failure. It's one of the reasons it's really important to pick just 1 or 2 skills per character and then really hammer them. Specializing means you'll often automatically succeed at these checks as opposed to spreading yourself thinner and essentially having a chance to fail at everything. Success! We have brought glory upon thine ancestors. The men stop dead in their tracks, seemingly shocked back from their momentary lapse of sanity by your words. The pair blinks towards you in a moment of indecision. and then stumbles up to the main deck, and the tumult that seems to be taking place there. Lovely. Obviously, we could have also just tried to circumvent them. We could have wrapped around, but I'm fairly certain we would have been caught before we hit those stairs. That said, before we do that, we also have this very conspicuous blood trail. The one we've been kind of off and on following all the way from the cargo hold. Which I think bears further investigation. Oh yes, and we could also get some rest here if we really needed it, which we don't. Oh, well, not that we could anyway. Not given current circumstances. Fair enough. There's our first lock chest, obviously an opportunity to use those lockpicks we found earlier, if we were actually trained to use them. But as we are not, we will instead lean on Roland for this one. He's got roughly twice the athletic score we do, so much more ideal for these sorts of brute force solutions. And there we go. Which nets us our very first shield, as well as a fine sword, both of which we'll put to immediate use. And for those who've played 3rd edition D&D, or Pathfinder, pretty familiar concept. Masterwork weapons grant +1 to accuracy. Most other Masterwork gear instead reduces the encumbrance penalty by 1. And yet another lock. We'll go ahead and smash this one as well. Note, however, every time we do brute force a lock or door like this, we do take a point of damage. So it does come with some cost. You recognize the corpse of one of the crewmates, a young man of barely 16 years called Sullum. The youth has been mauled to death by what you assume are the grotesquely altered rats you encountered just minutes ago. The corpse is still warm. Grim. And there by his bedside, our real prize, a fine dagger, and 2 moderate attunement tonics, which are used to restore magicka, or mana. Obviously not much use to our current crew, but we'll take them. Might come in handy later. Ah, yes, and here we go. This is stuff that is of more immediate use. Potions of resistance, potions of vitality. Essentially a starter pack of potions for protagonists of all shapes and sizes. Plus some brandy. And a surgeon's journal. Though no sign of the surgeon themselves, I notice. Written on the day of departure from the mainland. Left Adler's helm today with a full complement of passengers. Mercenaries by the looks of it. Paid well. Ship was dispatched by Guild before we could fully restock medical supplies. Hopefully we won't need them. Then again, our passengers make me uneasy. Written 5 days ago. Brawl in mess. Had to set nose. Men seem on edge. Can't say I blame them. Have been sleeping poorly and dreams are unsound. Written 4 days ago. Egon came to me today with a bite wound that he sustained whilst working in the hold. Didn't see creature, and I would say it was a rat's bite if it weren't for the size and some aspect of the dentition that I find hard to explain properly. Written 2 days ago. Was visited today by Navigator Aslem. He asked for Whitefern, a sedative. Claimed he had trouble sleeping. Suspected he was not fully forthcoming, and when pushed he mumbled something about the stars being odd. Not sure what he meant, and he left before I could push him further. Written today. Men are about to break. We cannot maintain our course for Idra. Captain advised me today to make ready the surgery and to expect casualties. I suspect he intends to inform our passengers that he refuses to land on the island. If this is my last... The entry trails off. Well, that's certainly ominous. Though I suppose it does point towards where the surgeon may be now. We'd best go intervene. Mutiny. You emerge onto the deck and see two groups of men facing each other with weapons drawn. The ship shakes violently in the grip of a storm as lightning tears across the sky. Amidst the din of the storm and their frantic arguments, you bellow for the attention of the assembled crewmen and mercenaries. Both the ship's captain and the leader of the mercenaries you hired, a coarse thug of a man named Estavo, turn their attention to you. They look ready to use the unsheathed weapons in their hands at the slightest provocation. You address the mercenary leader. The mercenary leader, Estavo, flicks his dark eyes to you, but keeps his blade fixed on the desperate captain. There's a reason he's known as Fireblood to his men. Estavo, you'll get your money, but let me handle this. A cruel smile twitches into life on Estavo's wind-weathered face. There's only one rich noble girl, but we can always find more sailors. The ship's captain bristles at these words. Captain, why have we not dropped anchor? Something dire stalks these shores. We cannot approach without risking the ire of that horror. A jittery mutter of agreement rises from the sailors, causing Estavo's eyes to darken even further. What horror? What have you seen? Naught but glimpses. My men have seen the shadow of something deep in water, stalking us. Nothing natural moves like that. Estavo glares murderously at the captain. You would renege on our deal based on a mere glimpse? There is desperation in the captain's voice. We are seasoned sailors. We do not balk at shadows. You need to be alive to rescue this girl you speak of. I suppose that does make sense. I trust your judgment, Captain. If you think it's too dangerous, perhaps it is best we back away for the time being. Estavo lets out a short, hoarse laugh. Danger, I don't mind. Working for fools. That's how people get killed. Before you can reply, Estavo whistles, and his men charge at you and the ship's crew. And here we go, fight number 2. With, of course, our basic combat walkthrough, as well as a note up top mentioning the 100 Suns, our own mercenary company, is now hostile towards us. That will also have effects later down the line. Blood will flow. Deploy thine party. Oof, we did not roll well on initiative. One of the drawbacks, I suppose, of tanking agility. But yeah, ultimately, the prologue here basically prompts you to either alienate the guild or your own mercenary company, and then later down the line you'll encounter both in future chapters, with your decision here, of course, heavily impacting how they later interact with you. A bit blunt, perhaps, but I do appreciate actual meaningful choice and consequence. Oh, shoot, I should have probably downed a potion. Alright, I'm sure that's fine. We will, however, top off Roland. Can't engage this round, but we'll position for next. Oh, shoot, right. Well, we are not fine. Yes, once an attack pierces that ablative vitality layer and does actual health damage, you start suffering serious consequences. We'll go ahead and top off, though that does not offset the leg wound. Roland charges into the fray. Immediately drops one foe and panics another. But yeah, you can definitely see how combat can quickly spiral out of control here. Huzzah! We're safe forever! Thankfully, since this is just the prologue, they're still going relatively easy on us. But that is about to change. You rest your sword arm and survey the carnage. Then, suddenly, a loud crash as something collides violently with the hull. Surviving mercenaries and crewmen alike fight to keep their footing as the ship lurches. Suddenly, huge, monstrous tentacles burst from the water around the ship. For a split second, before the terror sets in, you wonder what Estavo must be thinking as the monstrosities loom over him. After reaching their full height, the tentacles curve inwards and smash into the ship. Some pierce straight through the deck, others snap the masts like they were matchsticks. You stand, frozen in place. Through the haze of splintered wood and panicked screams, you notice Roland. He throws himself out of the way of a tentacle, but begins to fall overboard as the ship lurches once more. You dash towards the ship's fractured rail, dodging holes in the deck and wounded men beseeching you for help. Roland hangs by one arm from the side of the ship. You try to grab him. You lunge for Roland's arm, but he loses his grip and your fingers close only around thin air. You missed him by an inch. He falls wordlessly downward. You watch as he's swallowed by the raging sea. The ship is listing fatally, and you see the great tentacles high above you, poised for the coup de grace. Abandon ship! As you jump, you hear the terrible rending of wood giving in to flesh. The impact of the water winds you, the waves pummel you down, the currents beseech you to go deeper, ever deeper. Peaceful blackness. You sink. Two weeks earlier. And we're healed. All thanks to the linear nature of time. You hear that? You ever get seriously injured, just go back to a time when you weren't injured. It's as simple as that. A guardsman dressed in the livery of the noble house Berryn. The guard scowls somewhat at you. Armsmaster Lyra awaits you at the main entrance. You'd best talk to her if you've not already done so. Come here, whelp. An aging, armored man in the livery of House Berryn stands and scowls at you. Eyes like coal peering out from a craggy face, fringed top and bottom with wild white hair. You stare back. The older man crosses his massive arms, steps forward, and leans towards you. So, young sellsword, come looking for a scrap, have you? Though his voice is full of gravel, there's now a glint in his eyes as though the old coals have begun to warm up. Ha! Gideon, you old fool, it's good to see you. A single bark of laughter emanates from the dense beard as he embraces you in a crushing bear hug. Gideon may be older and grayer, but from the force of his hug, you don't reckon you'd have any more chance of beating him now than you did as a 12-year-old. All right. Go easy, you old boar. Gideon steps back and allows you to breathe again, before grabbing you by the shoulders. We heard of your father's passing. Truly, he sits with the golden dead now. Tell me, how did he die? Let's not dwell on old wounds. Do you know why I'm here? Master Cato will chew your ear plenty when you see him, Berryn. Lyra, the new master-at-arms, awaits you by the main entrance. She'll escort you, and don't ask her not to. If you think I had a temper... The joke fails to hide the note of anxiety in the grizzled houseguard's voice. Something's wrong. What are you hiding from me, old friend? Ooh, actual chance of failure on this one. Oh, close. Never could pull the wool over your eyes. Truth is, many a day's been dark of late for House Berryn. Perhaps it all started when you and your father left. A guilty grimace flashes across his face. Or maybe it started even earlier. Gideon pauses to blow out a long breath. I won't betray my master's confidence by saying more. Best you see him yourself. Very well, I'll go to the Master of Arms. Lyra, you said? If you want to explore for old time's sake, take this lantern. Lord Berryn will wait. And we don't want you getting lost in the hedge maze again. The man laughs heartily and hands you a small brass lantern. Whatever may come to pass, it did this old warrior a barrel of good to see you again, boy. The old man slaps you on the shoulder in parting, almost knocking you off balance. He then seems to remember something as he leans in conspiratorially. My damn knees are acting up again. Can't hardly sleep on account of the aches. Let me tell you, I'd take an arrow in the leg any day. If you're going over to the kitchen later for a bit of grub, a bottle of brandy from the wine cellar would make me a happy man. Gideon shifts as if to emphasize his stiff knees. But first, don't keep Lyra waiting any longer. Talk to her first, and I'll be here for later. Okie dokie. Talk to Lyra, and then fetch yon brandy. Also, pet yon dog. You pet the dog. Perfect. 10 out of 10, no notes. Game of the year. I do like that that's just like an ingrained part of gaming culture now. If there's a dog or a cat, you have to be allowed to pet it. Unless I suppose it's some sort of monstrous nightmare dog or cat, I guess. But even then, still, maybe. Anyway. Let's chat up Lyra, then we'll do some exploring. A woman stands before the main entrance to the villa. Her posture speaks of a graceful, coiled power, that of a dueling ace. No doubt she is the new master-at-arms for House Berryn. As you approach, she offers a quick, neat bow, just low enough to be respectful. Greetings, Farron. Master Cato welcomes you back to House Berryn. The Master is eager to meet with you and is ready at your leisure. However, if you wish to refresh yourself first, he suggests you visit the kitchen for some food, and then perhaps walk the grounds and gardens? The old hedge maze. Why? The estate was your home for many years, despite the circumstances you left it. Perhaps the Master feels it would be good to revisit some old memories? Lyra's eyes narrow in a barely perceptible frown. Or some old ghosts? What does old Cato want with me, anyway? After all these years? That is for the Master himself to answer, and he will soon enough. For now, though, please, get some food and look around. I'm sure old Gideon will be happy to see you if you've not talked to him already. Very well, I'll do that. I suppose I could eat? Excellent. Though I'm sure you still know your way around the grounds, the kitchen is in the building to the east, and the garden and hedge maze is to the west. Come back and check in with me once you've stretched your legs. All right. Let's fill in some gaps in our backstory. And pet this doggo. Woof indeed, my friend. You'll find the kitchen in the eastern end of the courtyard. The garden and hedge maze is to the west. And I didn't remind you that it's a poor idea to enter the maze without a lantern. Have a good evening, my lord. Well, what about up here? What do we have up here? Ah, nothing. All right, fair enough. You enter the kitchen and a pair of scullions offer a hurried bow. It's all so much quieter, emptier, and gloomier than you remember. Of course, old Magda is no longer where she used to be, sitting by the oven. Kind, red-faced, and tending a shank of lamb. You remember the matronly woman as she sat, humming to herself, pouring fat over the roasting meat. "Child, come here, will you?" Magda was always a beacon of kindness in a childhood where such qualities were few and far between. You go to Magda. Magda clasps you gently with her tubby hand. "Have you eaten yet?" Before you can answer, she produces a small bundle of treats from her apron and hands it to you. As son to the master-at-arms for the great House Berryn, you did not go wanting. Materially, at least. "Thank you." Magda looks at you with kind eyes as you pick at the bundle. "He's here again, down in the cellar. He's not so good, my child. Sleeping now, but it would be best if you got him to bed, afore his men see him like this. Again." The knot in your stomach is as real now as it was when you were 12. "I'll go get him." "Don't worry, he won't make a fuss. He just needs time. You know, Farron, deep wounds take a long while to heal." The old woman turns back to her meat and resumes her meandering humming. The sound of a man clearing his throat snaps you back out of your reminiscing. "May I help you, my lord?" the man in a chef's outfit offers in a hoarse voice. Ah, yes, flashback within a flashback. Not at all disorienting. Sorry about that. The chef offers a short bow and a tired but sincere smile. "I am Chef Armand, and my humble kitchen is at your disposal, my lord. Sadly, I was told of your arrival only minutes ago, and my oven must be fired up again. You must be famished." "Indeed, I am." "My suggestion is thusly. Whilst I stoke the fire, you run down in the pantry and fetch some cured ham and cheddar cheese. I will then teach you how to cook my renowned melted cheese sandwich, and you shall never again want for an evening meal for as long as you live. And also have cheese and ham." "Very well." "Splendid. The pantry is west of the wine cellar, and the cheese is kept in the northernmost room. Return when you have the cured ham and cheddar, and I shall provide bread and instructions. Now, venture forth into the underworld." Right, I'll do that. Where exactly is that? "Use the hatch on the floor over there." Armand points towards a wooden hatch by the wall. "It's quite dark down there, but there should be a lantern in a chest near the stairs. Good luck." Chef Armand wanders back and forth, tending the fire and keeping his kitchen tidy. He has the gait of a man who has been on his feet for far too many hours. "Oh, one more thing. Kittian asked me to fetch his, medicine." "Ha! The old wretch is too cowardly to come himself, so he sends you instead? The brandy will be the end of him, I say. Then again, who am I to deny the old fool his few pleasures? You'll find a crate of fine Gremian brandy in the northeast corner of the wine cellar." "All right, let us fetch yonder supplies. A flimsy pretext to conjure up yet more unpleasant memories. But at least we'll get a sandwich out of it. You know, I've had worse deals." Empty bottles litter the floor of this room. You chuckle to yourself as you imagine the kitchen staff in their wine-tasting sessions. No doubt, much revelry has taken place here. Then a cool gust of wind comes from the passage to the north. The wine cellar lies that way, and you can almost hear faint sobbing. Ghosts, no doubt. Ooh, look at this. This is where the real wheeling and dealing takes place. But you know what they say, you've got to be sharp if you want to be the big cheese. And that's enough levity. Back to being bummed out. You're gripped by a long-hidden memory upon entering this part of the cellar. You sealed it away, but in doing so, preserved its strength. And now, it demands freedom. You can still recall smelling him before you could make out his writhing shape in the dim light of the cellar. "Mistress Valeria, open the door!" Your father doesn't even notice you in the throes of his intoxicated ramblings. "How could they take her? Her chambers were locked from inside. Where is she?" You try to shake some sense into him. Your father jolts upright, the bloodshot whites of his eyes glaring out of the darkness. "We found her, wandering the forest outside the estate. Mistress Valeria." You help him stand. Haltingly and leaning heavily on you, your father manages to stand. "She was never the same. Whatever happened broke her. It was the girl, you know. The seed was planted in Valeria that night. But how could you know? You were but a babe yourself." You help lead the now sobbing man out of the cellar. "Stop it, Father." "Lord Cato trusted me, and I failed him. But Valeria was the one to pay the price. Mind broken, and that spawn of a child." Your father's voice seethes with fury. "Enough!" "Don't talk back to me, you bastard! What do you know about honor? As much as your harlot mother!" Your father steps away from you unsteadily, tears streaming down his contorted face. "Shut up! Shut up!" You draw a ragged breath and snap out of the memory, your knuckles white. You're alone in the damp cellar and don't particularly feel like dwelling here. Fetch you on brandy. Sounds like we could use it. But just the one. Well, I suppose we'll have to make do with our sandwich. The spirits are spoken for. Sandwich monger, I brought your sandwich mongings. Perfect. First of all, here is some bread. Now the cauldron is quite empty and just warm enough for you to use. Remember, you need both the bread, ham, and cheese to make the perfect sandwich. Now go give it a try and bring me the result. I shall see if you have it in you. Well, I mean, I don't have it in me just yet. It is yet to be consumed. Also, wow, another successful crafting check. Really wasting all those crits. Behold, the fruits of my sandwich craft. Armand wafts the scent of the grilled sandwich toward his nose. Ah, the crust of the bread, the softness of the cheese, the savoriness of the ham. Perfection. You shall indeed never again go hungry in the night. Quite a lofty promise there, my friend, but let's hope you're right. Though I, of course, strongly suspect you are very much not. Gideon? Have you seen Lyra yet? Best not keep her waiting. Yeah, I've seen her. But here, old man, I've got your medicine. Ha! That's some fine foraging, young whelp. Before you can get a word in, Gideon snatches the bottle, uncorks it, and drinks deeply. The old man, eyes closed in relief, lets out a deep sigh. May your sleep be dreamless, he speaks as if to himself. What was that? Gideon smiles sadly. An old soldier's greeting. Something one mercenary would say to another as a prayer to not dwell on painful memories. The kind that comes with the work. Your father and I... Gideon halts momentarily and looks at you. Your father and I would always part with those words. Now I've held you long enough. Be on your way. Yeah, it's just rough all over. Just ask the doggo. I do really like how they drip feed you the narrative. It never becomes overwhelming. It's never a full-on lore dump. They leave gaps for you to fill in and then slowly help you shape it with additional bits and bobs of additional context. You stand before the gate to the hedge maze. It stirs old feelings of both dread and elation. The sounds and smells of the estate grounds as they were long ago call to you from distant memory. You feel you could easily plunge into their depths. You let yourself go and remember. Which daydream is it this time? Are you valiantly defending me from rebels again? Embla throws a pine cone at you, snapping you from your reverie. She's 10 years old, and you're a year her senior. Let's play hide-and-go-seek in the maze. I'll hide. You faintly hear someone yell her name from the distance. You better run, Star Child. Only my mother calls me that, Embla says, frowning. Where did you hear it from? Before you can reply, she flings another pine cone at you and darts off into the maze. You quickly give chase. You hear a man's voice yell Embla's name again, much closer now. Either way, she's lost to you in the winding passages of the hedge maze. Your memory tugs at you, urging you on to the center of the maze. And thus the narrative continues to form. As per our childhood memories, the lady of the house, Valeria Berryn, went missing from her room only to be found some time later, addled and wandering in the woods, with Embla, the Star Child. An event which ultimately may have proven to be our father, the former Master-at-Arms, undoing, since he had so woefully failed in his task to keep her safe. You stand at the center of the maze. It feels much less impressive than you remember. The ornamental pond was once an ocean. The rock at its heart, a wind-swept island. You found me, Daydreamer. You remember the tone of her voice, and you can almost see the impish 10-year-old girl wading through the pond. Why do you always come here? I like the water. It's so calm. Embla shoots you a mischievous look. You notice the faintest tang of ozone. She makes a slow-motion hop through the water, her fingers trailing the pond's surface. Where water and skin meet, strange colors bleed and spread across the surface. Embla, you'll get in trouble. Stop it. Embla moves her fingers across the water's surface like a painter's brush. Colors spill across the pond, and for a sleeping moment you fancy that you can see the cloud-topped mountains. Or was it the ramparts of an impossibly large city reaching towards the heavens? The silence is shattered by a shout, along with the beguiling images. Mistress Embla, the master requests you in the house, immediately. That's my father. Something's wrong. It's Mother. She's ill again. I think I cause it, with what I can do. It poisons her mind. How long until Mother isn't Mother? Or until Father isn't Lord, or your father isn't Master-at-Arms? How long will any of it last? Why are you talking like this? Do you ever feel like everything is a lie? Like there's a veil that covers everything, but in some parts it's thin enough to see through? Embla starts as your father steps breathily into the enclosed garden. He's red-faced from exertion and anger. "Young lady, you can't run off like this. The whole estate is looking for you. Your mother is ill and needs you. Now!" You say nothing. Your father shoots you a stern glance. "I'll deal with you later." Embla says nothing as your father grabs her by the arm and hauls her past you, back to the house. She doesn't meet your eyes as you pass. Finding yourself back in the present, a chill has crept into your bones. You'd best move on. There really is something about the writing I do appreciate. That, combined with the music, really helps build and maintain a very melancholy atmosphere. You know, despite the relatively crude visuals by modern standards. That said, I would also appreciate a proper mapping function, but, you know, can't have it all, I suppose. Alright, looks like we're pretty much done out here. Though I think there's still one or two brief side treks to pursue. There you are. If your nostalgia is appeased, the Master will see you now. Yeah, let's go see old Cato. Get this over with. Very well. If it pleases you, the Master is in his office just ahead. And note, once you meet with the Master, things may move quickly, and you may not have another chance to walk the grounds. Understood. I'll go see him. Don't worry, I remember the way. I suppose you do, but I'll escort you nonetheless. A flicker of a smile plays across her face, and she beckons for you to lead the way. The opulence is faded, the shadows longer. Clearly much has changed since the last time you were here. You try to remember how long it's been. It's been years, perhaps decades, since you were here. Not since your father was the house arms master. Not since... You must have your wits about you, and perhaps now is not the time to dwell on such painful memories. Not since your father's exile. You were no more than 12 when you were driven from the household. Hard were the years that followed. The mercenary life is bloody and unforgiving. Those years stole your childhood. And eventually they took your father too. But your father had always insisted, to his dying breath, that his failure had been his own. That he had gotten the fate he deserved. The memories are painful nonetheless. Flanking the doorway are two marble statues. The craftsmanship is stunning, but the sight of the two women depicted fills you with sadness. You stop to study them. One you recognize immediately, Valeria Berryn, the mistress of the house. You remember her as a gray ghost, absent and unwell. The other statue depicts the girl you once knew so well, Embla-matic, daughter of the house, and now a woman grown strong and clear-eyed. Her likeness has none of her mother's cowed timidness. How fares the Lady Valeria these days? The mistress is vacationing in the countryside, Lyra answers curtly. Of course, and what of Embla? Lyra's eyes flicker ever so slightly. We should hasten to Master Berryn. He's long been impatient to see you. Right. Well, I'm sure he can wait a little longer. Let's meander ever so slightly. Lyra clears her throat behind you. Not that way, if you don't mind. The Master's office lies through here. She motions to the left. It's been years. Surely you don't mind if I wandered just a little. Master Cato has summoned you, and I don't intend to keep him waiting. Besides, there is no need for you to disturb the servants in their tasks. I'll stay out of their way. They won't even know I'm here. Lyra goes still for a fraction of a second, as if sensing something beyond just your perception. Then her eyes narrow, and a mischievous smile plays across her features. Through the dining hall lies the hearth. A beast lurks there. I wager you cannot make your way past the servants in the dining hall and sneak up on this beast without being noticed? Is that so? And what exactly are we wagering? We'll decide that once we see if you can be as quiet as you claim. The dining hall and hearth lies ahead. And mind your steps. I'll only give you one chance. And Stealth Tutorial 2.0. Though in this case, we actually have a bit of an unfair advantage. For it turns out that Lyra herself is a bit of a sneaksmith. Not a fantastic one, but certainly better than we are. So we'll just let her take lead on this, essentially win the wager against herself. Though, you know, as cheesy as it is, this is an important object lesson for the player, to better learn exactly what stealth entails, and the importance of letting other characters in the party take the lead from time to time. Look at that, I made it. Me, all by myself. The room around you lies silent and seemingly empty, save the crackling of burning logs. The fire casts a dim light and dancing shadows. A single goblet stands half empty on a small table. Lyra's warm breath on your ear startles you as she whispers, near imperceptibly. We have walked into a trap. The beast has laid an ambush for us. Can you sense him preparing to strike? Hairs stand on the back of your neck. If it is from the latent danger or something else, you cannot tell. No, do not look, she whispers, louder now. Close your eyes. Let your sensing be the absence of action. Become empty for the ambience to flow into you. Now, is he to your right or left side? You empty your mind. You whirl around to the right, grasping instinctively at the weapon that isn't hanging by your side. Blood rushes to your head and your mouth goes dry. The figure standing in the shadows behind you is laden with the promise of violence. In the corner of your eye, you register Lyra biting her lip in gleeful anticipation. The figure's slow laugh has the texture of an avalanche, as he slowly emerges from the shadows. You'd be dead either way, but at least you'd get a chance to see the blade. Lyra laughs and pats Roland on the shoulder. Berryn, I present Roland Greyeye, a man you should pray to always fight alongside and never against. Roland offers up a large, battle-worn hand, and his grasp is surprisingly soft as you clasp it. You realize he's making an effort not to harm you with the gesture. Good to see I'm not alone in waiting on the rich and noble. His mouth contorts into something resembling a smile. So I take it Lord Cato has summoned you as well. Roland's good eye shifts momentarily to Lyra, who interjects. One of my master's foremost skills is his ability to recognize and attract resourceful individuals. Roland is one such individual, as are you, it seems. Now, my master has waited long enough, and you two will have enough time to get to know one another later. Lyra offers a short bow to Roland, who returns it in a surprisingly respectful manner. We must go. Lyra leads you back through the dining hall. A slight sense of urgency has crept into her step. Wait, what about our wager? Ah, the wager. Very well, what is a fitting prize for such a feat? And, you know, normally I wouldn't do it, but I don't suppose a kiss would be too much to ask for? Now that's some proper lip service. Lyra spins around, and for a moment you fear she's going to punch you. Abruptly, she leans in and whispers in your ear. In that case, we shall save it for when you return from your assignment. Now let's go. Fair enough. Lyra closes the doors to the dining hall. Let's not keep Master Cato waiting. The finality in her voice leaves no room for discussion. Though we are not, in fact, headed to his office just yet, instead we will detour off to the left here. Not that this particular chamber is of much use to us, but if we were a caster, this would be an ideal opportunity to fill out our spell books. Though in our particular case, it is of course of much less use. I'm simply taking these items out of habit. Doubly moot, given that this is both a flashback and you lose all of the items you picked up during the prologue. Bit of a spoiler, I suppose, but not by much of a stretch. And I mean, I feel like it was pretty obvious once they started heaping all those goods upon us during the tutorial, which has now officially reached its end. Cato Berryn sits tall in a tasteful but modest reception room. He looks less imposing than you remember, and with a few more crow's feet. Nonetheless, he's lost none of his composure or air of casual authority. You take a seat across a formidable desk from him. This study, like the rest of the villa, is half-lit, giving a morose cast to its opulence. The older man's face creases into a tired but genuine smile, which momentarily lifts some of the room's oppressive mood. It's a mercy to see you again. Your own man and in your prime, Cato says, before a frown consumes his smile. It's just a shame our reunion is overshadowed by the fates of those we love. But perhaps, together, we can yet improve our collective circumstances? So, you heard about my father's death? Cato leans forward, hands clasped beneath his chin. I shan't deny it. I was saddened to hear of his passing. Despite everything, I remember him fondly. Do you? Funny way to show it. You're the one who drove him to drinking and mercenary work. Cato leans back again, and his eyes go distant. He failed in his duties. For an armsmaster, there is no greater shame than a lapse of vigilance. He drove himself into exile. Lyra shifts slightly behind Cato. If he failed, then it was never possible to succeed. That may be so, but it is done. I regret his loyalty could not be rewarded. Sometimes the tapestry's weave is not so easy to discern. Cato's face is still mild, yet you sense his tone hardening. You realize by exiling him you condemned me as well. And yet now, all these years later, you call me back. Not to apologize, but because you need my help. Your anger is understandable. The hardships you must have suffered on the road are written in your face. Such is the cost of mercenary work, I suppose. But do not presume to understand the forces that were at play, and still are. Just tell me why I'm here, old man. What do you want from me? Embla is missing. Cato's voice quivers momentarily, betraying his stoic features. Now, I beg of you, Farron, help me find my daughter. Help her return home, where she belongs. Why call me back for this? Surely you have your own men. Is it not obvious? You've clearly grown to inherit your father's resourcefulness. And besides, Embla has trusted you since before either of you could speak. What happened to her? She left without notice a week ago. From the scant clues we had, we believe she boarded a ship bound for one of the outer isles, Idra. She went there of her own free will. At the time, I thought little of it. Cato begins to glower. Since then, however, there have been reports. Grave ones. Reports? No one and no word has left Idra in days. Rumor has it that even the Imperial augurs are in the dark. I don't know how this touches the fate of my daughter, but she must be returned to me, one way or another. And you have no idea why she left? Something has been building in her for years. An aptitude of sorts. But I suspect you already knew? In any case, it's grown much stronger lately, and drives her in ways I cannot understand. I suspect she is looking for answers. An aptitude. Explain. An aptitude of the worst kind. It does not spring from the canonical imperial praxis. Instead, it comes from elsewhere. It is the kind the Empire does not suffer to exist. I hope it's only answers that she seeks. Why Idra? Why indeed. There is little on the island save the port of Horan. If Idra was her destination, she must have landed there. Horan. That's an unfortunate name. Yes. An old imperial port and home to a few hundred whalers, traders, and the occasional smuggler. We can only speculate as to what drew her there, but it's our only lead. Brass tacks, old man. What exactly do you want from me? Hire mercenaries, travel to Idra, and begin your search in the port of Horan. From there, I trust you to do what needs to be done. Spare no cost. Just bring back my daughter. Mercenaries. Yes. If nothing else, the port will be dangerous enough. That is why I have summoned a Roland Greyeye to me, a crude but effective sellsword that I've made good use of before. He shall accompany you on this task. Right, yeah, I met him on my way in. Seems sturdy enough. The man is a grizzled veteran. He may have slowed with age, but his experience and reliability more than make up for it. He's also much respected by similar men, and so will be instrumental in hiring a reliable crew. Right. Yeah, I'm sure that'll work out great. Yeah, I'm sure. Cato shows you his upturned palms, beseeching. I know this thing I ask of you is fraught with danger, but this is your chance at improving your fortune, materially and in honor. What say you? Fine, I'll do it. But for her sake, not yours. Cato smiles softly, visibly relieved. And for a moment he looks like the man you remember. Have you any final questions or matters to discuss? Time is, as I'm sure you appreciate, of the essence. No, let's just get on with it. Cato stands with poorly concealed effort. And Farron, you stand and meet his gaze. Return her to me. There is no other outcome of this affair. You remain silent and turn to leave. And thus ends the prologue. Once again plunging us into a somewhat untenable situation. Still with the maimed leg. I was really kind of hoping that would heal in the interim, but fair enough. We've actually got a level up in the queue, and those do tend to heal most injuries, so we're actually in relatively good shape, all things considered. You know, Roland in the deep. Notwithstanding. That's it. We are over an hour into this, so this does feel like a good place to call it. A bit of a shame. I was kind of hoping we'd have more action. I felt like they threw you into it a bit faster. There was a lot more narrative there than I remembered. But still, I very much enjoyed going back through it again. It actually refreshed my memory for my other for fun run on the side. A few more details to latch onto, connections to draw, speculation to spin. That's it. Hopefully this was enough to give you a taste of what the game has to offer. It is very much a nostalgia-soaked retro experience, which both enhances but simultaneously does kind of hold it back as a modern CRPG. But all that aside, I do feel like it has some very distinct strengths that many games struggle with, the atmosphere first and foremost among them. And a number of the mechanics, although simple on the surface, are actually nuanced and complex enough under the hood that they are actually fairly satisfying to work with. That said, we'll hit the pause button for now, and of course, if you found this at all intriguing, I encourage you to go check it out yourself. I mean, I'm assuming you did if you made it this far. And of course, if you'd like to see me continue picking at it, just let me know in the comments below, or more importantly, on the upcoming polls. Because goodness knows, I'm already playing this game for fun on the side. I would be more than happy to continue exploring this story with the raiders in tow. And you know, if not, fair enough. Either way, plenty more stuff coming down the pipeline. See you then.